Bettina, I think we're live if you want to go ahead and start.
Great. Hello, welcome to our second annual webinar on how to run an effective religious liberty campaign. I'm Bettina Krause. I'm editor of Liberty Magazine, and I'm so glad you've joined us because, you just need to look at the headlines today. Religious liberty is an issue that's important in our public discourse, and it's important to us as Seventh-day Adventists. It's deep within our theology, within our history, it's within our DNA as a church. And that's why every year, not just the church in North America, but in every division around the world church, we take a special Sabbath each year to remember just how important this fundamental value is, and also to consider how we can best protect and defend it within our particular political or cultural context. So if you've run many religious liberty campaigns through the years, or if 2024 is going to be your very first religious liberty campaign, welcome. We're glad you're here. We're glad you're part of the conversation. And we hope that you'll take away some useful tips for how to plan a really impactful program in your congregation. Now, I am delighted to be joined today by two of my colleagues, Melissa Reid, who is an associate editor of Liberty Magazine, and also an associate director of the North American Division Public Affairs and Religious Liberty Department, with a special responsibility for government affairs. Melissa, why don't you just tell us a little bit about what you do?
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, I have the real privilege of being able to serve in a couple of different roles in our ministry area. So I've been working with Liberty Magazine and enjoying being a part of the team there for several years, and continue to serve in that capacity and support the work that Bettina helms. And what a fantastic job you're doing, by the way, Bettina. But my primary responsibility these days is to represent the Seventh-day Adventist Church and the interest of its members as religious freedom interest on Capitol Hill. Also supporting the religious freedoms of other people of faith and other faith traditions. So we advocate for people of faith and the organizations that they are a part of, making sure that their right to be able to practice and share their faith, and for faith organizations to be able to be run in a way that's consistent with their understanding of the Bible.
And that really does go to the core of our ministry, our public affairs and religious liberty ministry. And we'll be talking more about that a bit later. I'm also glad to be joined by another colleague, Amireh Al-Haddad, who is the Director of Public Affairs and Religious Liberty for the Southern Union. And we work together on many different initiatives, and we're delighted to have you here this evening. Why don't you tell the listeners just a bit about what you do in your capacity?
Well, thank you. It's good to be here for the second year that we've done this. I am fortunate enough to be one of 9 union PARL directors. PARL stands for Public Affairs and Religious Liberty. And I am the director for the Southern Union, which is made up of 8 states and 8 conferences here in the southeastern United States. We have a humongous territory, but we have great religious liberty leaders. I know some of them are watching right now, and we're just so happy to not just be leaders in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, but to be servant leaders here in the church as well. And so we're here today to help you in your local church get your job done as efficiently and effectively as possible.
And that really is, Amireh, what this whole webinar is about this evening. So let me give you just a brief overview of how the program will run. We're going to start with just a quick overview of the basics of the Religious Liberty Sabbath and the campaign. And then we'll move on to the second part of the program, which is the more important part, and that is answering your questions. We have a list of questions we receive regularly from people, but we want to hear directly from you, what concerns you have, what confusions you may face when you look at the materials that you receive and how you can use them more effectively. But before we did get started, I wanted to say thank you to each one of you, because, you know, without you to keep this ministry before our church members, this ministry would struggle. And your role is absolutely crucial in this public witness of our church. And it's a public witness that has been happening for, 120 years now. I love to look back at the archives of Liberty magazine, and I wanted to show you an issue of Liberty magazine from exactly 110 years ago. This is the one from 1913. And if you have a look here, as you turn the page, you'll see here on the right-hand side, the editor starts talking about how readers can help support the mission of Liberty magazine. And then if you go to the next page, you see something that you're probably familiar with if you've worked with the campaign before, which is the names and addresses page, where you fill in the names and addresses of people you want to sponsor the magazine for. And this has been going on for 120 years. You are part of a long tradition of faithful service in keeping this ministry alive, and we thank you for it. To start off, Melissa, why don't you just take us through the key resources that people have at their disposal when they're planning a campaign? And I should say, look, Melissa, before you start, I'll give you a quick overview of the dates. So between now and January 13 is sort of your preparation. Sabbath, January 13 is Religious Liberty Sabbath, when the offering is collected. Then after that is a third phase up until March 31, where you have a sort of a few housekeeping duties to take care of. And they're the three phases that we'll be focusing on as we go through this program this evening. So Melissa, what resources can they use?
Absolutely. Okay, well, you all should be able to see my screen and see some very familiar graphics. So hopefully you all have received from your local conference or union a hard copy of lots of materials that we have available here online. If you haven't, be sure to reach out to your union or conference and ask for that, and they'll be happy to send it. But you'll see there, so this is our website, the Public Affairs Religious Liberty website. This is a real resource for you all throughout the year. Religiousliberty.info is the web address, and you just go under the resources tab, and then there under the resources tab, you see Religious Liberty Campaign. Or Religious Liberty Campaign materials. So what we have listed here is really, we hope, everything that you could want. And if it's not here, let us know and we'll make sure it's there next year. But everything you could want to support the promotion of this offering. So we have the English resources bundle, and then you'll see right below it the Spanish resources bundle. These are, again, digital versions of the hard copy campaign kit material that you received at your local church. But if you didn't receive it and it's time sensitive and you're wanting the information now and there isn't time to get it mailed from your union of conference, download that information or just download it if that's easier. We have it there available for you. So this includes in that bundle the order form, a letter for your local treasurer for how to process the money, really walks you through how to conduct the campaign and suggestions for things to do on Religious Liberty Sabbath. A poster there as well, and then a link to the text of the sermon that we commissioned for this year, which is written and presented by Pastor John Ashmead, who is the Associate Director of Public Affairs and Religious Liberty for the Atlantic Union Conference. You'll see next, after the resource bundle, we have social media images. You can download those here to be able to share the information with your church and the broader community, your broader community online, letting them know in advance to get prepared for the offering. As well as a PowerPoint slide. Many of our churches, I know at my local church, we now, all the announcements have corresponding PowerPoint slides whenever announcements are made up front. So we've got that there for you. Then we have individually the brochure, both in English and in Spanish separately. And then we have an HTML email, which is an emailable version of the campaign brochure, which you can send to your church email list. I feel like this is a really great newer resource. I'm not sure if this is the first year or maybe last year was the first year we did that. But I think, again, because we communicate digitally more frequently now, this is a great resource to be able to share all of this information with your local church members. There's also an email attachment version to be shared to that same email list. And then there's text of the sermon that we commissioned from Pastor Ashmead, downloadable, both an English and a Spanish version. And they're editable documents, Word documents, so that you or whoever is making use of the sermon can tailor the text to make it your own. And then finally, we have here the new subscription order form. This is, so in the packet that you received at church, you would have received the names of the list that you are currently sponsoring, that your church is currently sponsoring. And if you want to keep those names, continue to sponsor those names, then you'll mark that on that list, or make any updates or addresses on that list. But I think, but then if you have new names that you want to add to your subscriptions, then use this form here, the new subscription order form. So two really great resources that we're going to make available, but are not yet posted, is our annual Religious Liberty Offering Appeal video, and also a video of the Religious Liberty sermon being preached by Pastor Ashmead. And both of those resources will be available by Monday, December 18th. So be sure and check back onto this website. Again, that's religiousliberty.info. Go to the resources tab and then the campaign resources materials page. So check out the information now, become familiar with it, but then make sure and come back for those videos after December 18. So Amireh, why don't you tell us, I'm going to stop sharing here, but I wondered if maybe you could talk a little bit about what Religious Liberty Sabbath support looks like at the union or conference area.
I would be happy to, but before that, let me throw it to Bettina and ask Bettina if she can tell everyone why the offering is so important to begin with.
Well, the offering is the only time that we have a division-wide offering focused exclusively on this ministry. And this ministry is not just Liberty Magazine, although Liberty Magazine needs the support. It's not just Liberty Magazine, but it's many, many different facets. So Melissa, why don't you share some of the facets that the offering supports?
Absolutely. So as you said, the bulk of the funds that are raised during the Religious Liberty campaign, and specifically on Religious Liberty Sabbath, go to sponsor Liberty Magazine subscriptions to a group that we call thought leaders, I guess, is the name that we've used. And what that means is individuals who make decisions about our religious freedoms, right? And so we want to make sure that they have a biblical understanding of what religious freedom looks like. And so therefore, we want to make sure that Liberty Magazine gets into their hands. Now, as Bettina said, there is no budget item in our budget for specifically for Liberty Magazine subscriptions. So this annual offering is the only source for funding those sponsored subscriptions. Now, the subscriptions, we at our office, we handle something that we call our national priority list. And again, monies or funds that come in that are not tied directly to specifically sponsored subscriptions from your office, but just undesignated funds, that money goes towards helping to produce and maintain this national priority list. So who's on that list? Those are individuals that you would expect to see: members of Congress, their legislative aides, their legal counsel. We also have our state representatives on that national priority list. We have judges in many different capacities in federal and state, both in all different levels of the judicial system. We have our magazine subscriptions going to the governor's office of each state, as well as the attorney general's office. We also make sure that Liberty goes to religious freedom advocates that we work hand in hand with and want to make sure, or that we maybe haven't established a relationship yet with, but know that they again are influencing the religious freedom decisions that are being made that impact us or potentially impact us. And so we include those individuals in our national priority list. Now, the wonderful thing is that we have access to a subscription database which provides us with all of those names and addresses, and that database is kept current. So when you are looking at sponsoring Liberty Magazine subscriptions, you're going to want to focus on your local level thought leaders. And we'll talk a little bit about that more later. But as far as how the Religious Liberty campaign funds are used, those Liberty subscriptions and that national priority list is a big chunk. Another portion is used to support the North American Division Litigation Fund. And that money is resources that are needed to defend and preserve your religious liberty in court when necessary. Now, unfortunately, those situations occur. If you've worked in the religious liberty ministry for any amount of time, or maybe just in talking with local members, or maybe even you yourself have experienced religious accommodation challenges, particularly in the workplaces where that happens most often for Seventh-day Adventist believers. And when it's necessary for there to be legal action, the North American Division Litigation Fund helps cover the cost of those legal expenses, which gets very costly very quickly. So, Amireh, I'm going to throw it back to you now, and this time I want you to catch it. But why don't you explain how the union supports religious liberty from the funds that are raised for the annual Religious Liberty Cane? What does that money allow your union and the other unions, your ministry partners, to be able to do?
Sure. I caught it this time. But I have a preface to answering that question, because I want to brag about being a Seventh-day Adventist for a minute. Can I brag a little bit?
Please.
So, we just talked about the litigation fund, and as we look at the crowd that's outside the steps of our doors, our church doors, we're seeing in the last 15 years or so, we're seeing other organizations coming in and doing what the Seventh-day Adventist Church has been doing for over 110 years.
Yeah.
And they're getting a lot of publicity, and they're getting a lot of credit, and every now and then I see that they're actually getting a Seventh-day Adventist, in defending people. But we're here to do this for you. And again, I just want to say that we may not be the biggest, but I am proud of the fact that we have church members who have supported this ministry for 110 years, and we have been doing it. We're almost the oldest organization that has been continuously doing this type of litigation in the U.S. today. And I just wanted to kind of brag a little bit about Now let's go to the question that I caught and let you know how the offering is used in the union level. And I'm going to give you some generalizations. Every union may differ just a little bit, but the things that I'm going to list are kind of the things that we do here in the Southern Union, and you're going to find most of these things in whatever union you may be a member of. A portion of your offering that goes to religious liberty, to the ministry on Religious Liberty Sabbath, will come back to your union office. And the union office uses that for a variety of different things. We use it for educational purposes. Your union parle director and associate director or directors will come to your church, and we love doing Religious Liberty Sabbaths for you, not just during the campaign time, but we do this all year long, and we love doing it. And we love the opportunity to engage with you and the church members directly one-on-one. So that's one thing that we do. Another thing that happens, and I think we're all doing this in all the levels of church work in the North American division, is that we're using this portion that comes back to us to help us monitor state legislatures. So Melissa talked about doing it at the federal level, but your union office does it at your state level. And I think that that's important. In my union, we have 8 states. And not all of our states, luckily, run a year-long assembly or legislature, but you do have states like California that do go all year long, pretty much. And so that is another portion of what the offering will do for the members. Also, we help support our church members with things like Sabbath accommodation problems, religious accommodation problems. Yes, we have done contrary to popular belief, we have been doing vaccine cases for individual church members. And I can tell you that from my union, I personally have been doing vaccine cases for over 25 years. So it's not something that's new to us in our departments throughout the division. It is something that we have done before. We also do things like educational things, like in my union, we have something called Waymark's newsletter. And if you are a religious liberty leader in my union, you should be on my Waymark's newsletter list, and you'll get that 6 times a year. Hopefully the month that Liberty doesn't come out, you'll be getting Waymark's that comes out on the other month. And so that we are constantly giving you religious liberty information and religious liberty news throughout the cycle of the year. I'm sure I have forgotten something, but there's so much that we do. It's a part of it is religious liberty, and then part of it is a public affairs kind of ministry as well. And we kind of combine the two together, as is talked about in our name, public affairs and religious liberty.
Okay, so I have another question to throw to you, Amireh, but before I do, I want to encourage people who are listening. If you have questions, please put them in the YouTube chat now, and we will get to those when we take some Q&A a little later on. So any questions you have about the campaign, how the offering is used, about how you can interface better with the religious liberty ministry of your church, please put those questions in the chat. Now, the question that I have for you, Amireh, is that Melissa ran us through all the different resources that are now available online. And many of those resources mirror what churches are receiving in hard copy. Can you give us a rundown on how someone would use those resources that they receive in the mail in a typical religious liberty campaign?
Absolutely.
Okay, go for
Yeah.
it.
So get out your pen and paper because I want you to take a note. Here's one of the first things you need to do at least 2 weeks before the offering. So sometime around Christmas or the New Year, you need to make sure that you go to church and you find where your bulletin inserts are. Here's a copy of your bulletin inserts. And they should have been mailed, and I don't know if we'll see it here. This is a tear-off portion, and we have it in English and Spanish. This is a tear-out portion. It has an envelope in it, right there. People can either use this, fill it out and put it in the offering plate, or you can use a tithe envelope if you still give the old-fashioned way with a check or cash. You can also use our online Adventist giving website and list it for the religious liberty offering. But you need to go to church and you need to find where these bulletin inserts have landed. So some of you will ask your pastors, some of you may ask your church clerks, did these come in the mail? And you need to kind of put your hand on them because people will need to have those on the Religious Liberty Sabbath. But you're also going to, here's a envelope. You're going to be getting your material in an envelope that looks like this. It will have your name and address or wherever it was mailed to. And inside this envelope, you are going to have a very nice little campaign hard copy of the kit. And if you open it to the, if I can use the word centerfold, you're going to open it to the centerfold. And what you have here is a nice 17 by 11 poster that you can then either post on your bulletin board. You have the same graphic in the online resources if you want your AV team to go download that and post it as a slide to your announcement time. But this will help you just to kind of promote the offering, you know, as people walk through the halls of the church or they look at information on your church bulletin board. There's a lot more information inside this kit. If you just go through, you'll see we've included what to do if what your treasurer will do with the offering later on. So there are instructions here from the treasurer of the North American Division. You'll want to pull that. If your treasurer hasn't gotten a letter, you'll want to make sure that you just kind of pull that and make sure the treasurer has it. So you have a lot of information in this kit that you will want to look for and get, and this will kind of guide you through the process. But again, mark it on your calendar, go to church, find your bulletin inserts, track those down and see where they have landed. Also, don't forget to get with your AV team because if you don't have the skill set or you are shy and you don't want to stand up before the whole congregation and make a call for the offering, we have kind of filled that gap for you. And you can always use the video during the offering call for offering time. A lot of you, though, are great at asking for the offering. You're great at getting up in front of people. And so for you guys, you're going to use the video just as a supplement to what you will do personally up front in what we say in philanthropy is doing the ask, right? Asking people to give. So don't forget your online resources as well as these hard copies. Did I cover everything there?
I think you covered a lot, but I'm sure we'll circle back to it again as we get to the Q&A. I wanted to pick up, Amireh, on your mention of the video, the offering appeal video. And as everyone knows, or as most of us know, this is just a very short, usually around 4-minute video that we make available. It will be on the website where Melissa showed all those resources, religiousliberty.info. And we tell a story. Basically, we use that time to tell a story that sort of encapsulates why religious freedom is so important. And we tell it through the eyes of a personal story, usually. And I have to tell you, Melissa and Amireh, I am so excited about the story that we're telling this year, because it's not a traditional story. So often we talk about, we interview a church member who's lost a job because of Sabbath accommodation issues in the workplace, or someone who's been denied employment, or someone who has faced some sort of discrimination, and that we've had to step in and help them work through the legalities of that. But this time we have a celebration, because this year, June 29, the Supreme Court came down with a decision that really is, I don't think I'm overstating it to say it's something that, you know, we have worked for and prayed for 50 years. It is a decision in a case called Groff versus DeJoy that has really changed the landscape when it comes to workplace accommodation issues, or at least it provides a new start, and we hope that it will continue in a positive trajectory. But this case dealt with, it was actually a Sunday keeping Christian, but it was a Sabbath accommodation case. And we as Adventists were involved very heavily in this. An Adventist attorney, the PAL director for the Pacific Union, Alan Reinach, was actually the attorney in the trial portion of this case. And he was involved right up to the Supreme Court appeal. But this decision that came down has now provided a new legal standard that says to employers, hey, you cannot just ignore a request for Sabbath accommodation. You cannot just shrug it aside and hope that it'll go away. If you are a wise employer, after this Supreme Court decision, you will now take those Sabbath accommodation requests seriously. And so this is something that you can really bring before your congregation on January 13 next year and say, look, this is what the Public Affairs and Religious Liberty Ministry is all about. And it will be a wonderful video that really shows how Adventists have worked, you know, for decades for this, and how we have helped change the law in a very crucial area. Amireh and Melissa, I know both of you were very involved also in this case. Any comments about this theme for this year?
Well, I'll go first, Melissa. I'm so excited. So I love this case. This case is very important for Seventh-day Adventists. As one of the PARL directors who works on a daily basis on Sabbath accommodation cases for our church members, I can tell you I was so excited the first time that I quoted the Supreme Court decision for a church member who was having a Sabbath accommodation problem. I was like, yeah, I get to quote this case, and maybe, you know, maybe they'll see that there has to be some substantial reason why they're not going to accommodate this person that they've accommodated for 18 years. You know, so it's really exciting to be able to use that. And even though that case isn't finished because it's been tossed back to the lower court, and Alan Reinach is back on the case with Mr. Groff and the team there, we have a lot of, we have a lot of hope for what this could mean for Sabbath keepers in the workplace. And it's exciting. And I think that it's exciting to hear this story and to kind of see how this will be impactful for our members in the workplace.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I echo your all's excitement. It's a long time coming. There have been a lot of people, a couple of generations of Seventh-day Adventist public affairs and religious liberty directors who have been working towards righting a wrong, a judicial wrong, if that makes sense, a misinterpretation of what the Civil Rights Act was wanting or expecting from its original language with as far as religious accommodation in the workplace. And so I know there is definitely some celebrating, and certainly, we think of Bettina mentioned the video and sort of what we usually have profiled in the video, and that's individuals who have struggled and had challenges in the workplace because of this misinterpretation of the law. And so we're hoping that, a couple of years from now, we're going to be scrambling for religious liberty campaign content, video content, because, Graf has removed these religious accommodation issues. But I wondered, could we jump to the chat? I'm seeing lots of questions come in. And one of them is related to this question, which and we'll try to get to everybody, but I'm just going to do this in order of one of the participants, and thank you guys so much for jumping in and participating, was asking types of litigation that our office engages in. So we've talked a little bit about, or we talk a lot about, because that's the bulk of what we work on, is the Sabbath accommodation. And I do want to say for work, we're in the workplace. And I do want to say another praise is that most of the time it does not go all the way to litigation. Amireh and her colleagues in the union level are able to work with the church member and their employer, their HR department, and just most frequently, again, praise God, there's accommodation is made when there's just an explanation of what Sabbath means to us, what the law is, and things like that. But there's other cases, if you all remember, I don't remember if it was last year or
2 years ago.
A few years ago, there was another case that we highlighted, and I think unfortunately we're going to see this area of conflict with people of faith and the government who hold traditional views of marriage and sexuality and gender. It was dealing with a foster care situation, a really sad situation with grandparents wanting to foster their grandchild and were denied by the state because they said in a hypothetical question, again, this child was an infant, if this child wants to transition to another gender, or would you support that? And they answered honestly that they would of course love the child, but they would not be supportive of that, if that makes sense. Like they would not be, and so they were denied. And so the application, and so we got involved or helped assist with that lawsuit. And again, I think we're going to see a lot more cases in that way. We also, I know the Office of General Counsel also does asylum cases. Unfortunately, there's religious persecution, and we get asylum applicants that come in. But by and large, and then of course, there's just a real diversity of involvement in litigation when we deal with our amicus brief side of things, which is not supported by the offering, but is done by that same office. And amicus briefs is when we're just signing on to support or say why we're concerned about a particular piece of or a particular court case. And so that really will deal with all kinds of, whether it's land use rights. Again, that's another area that we've worked with as far as zoning issues and things like that. But, as you all know, workplace accommodation is for Seventh-day Adventists the primary area. And then one other question I'll answer, because I know I was at the top and I know it's an easy answer, and then I'll let you guys jump in, which is this session being recorded? Absolutely, yes, it is. So please, it's going to be bookmarked, archived right where you're watching it now on the NAD Public Affairs and Religious Liberty channel. Make sure and subscribe to this channel. So each time that there's a new video or a new webinar, and if for some reason you didn't hear about it, it will pop up if you have subscribed. And make sure and like our channel as well, so that way we can get the word out that we exist. So yep, just right here on this channel, this video will be archived. So please share with your colleagues and your friends and rewatch as well.
Now, here is a question that we receive a lot, and that is from Richard. Our church decided to hold the Religious Liberty Sabbath on January 27 because of speaker availability. Do you suggest maintaining it because of the offering date on the 13th? Amireh, why don't you take that one, since you get that question a lot, I know.
Well, if you're not going to have a special speaker or you're in a time crunch, I would say let's try to stay with the official offering date, but you don't have to, because we have 3 months where we say this first quarter of the year is for you to work towards, receiving those offerings, getting your names for Liberty Magazine, correcting the names that you already have, finding more names that you may want to add. So it's a process. And because your religious liberty department in your conference and your union is usually only made up of 1 or 2 people, if you spread that over 3 months, there's no way that you're going to get a special speaker. There's no way we can cover everybody. I have 1,400 churches. There aren't 1,400 Sabbaths in the year for me to go to churches. That would probably kill me if there was. But it's okay if you stay within that time period and just make sure that your offering is turned in by the last Sabbath in March, which I think is March the 30th this year. Don't quote me, I didn't look ahead on the calendar, but the last Sabbath in March. And then make sure your treasurer remits the offering, at least, if not before. The treasurer should be remitting the offering once a month with the regular monthly remittance. But if you have offering that comes in at the very end, again, make that remittance with your March offering. I already have an appointment. Somebody wanted me to come to their church in March. So I already have an appointment. That church will wait 2.5 months before they do Religious Liberty Day and take the offering. But you can't really wait longer than March the 30th to do it. So if you're having a Religious Liberty Sabbath in August, obviously you're going to take your offering on the official offering day and not wait until August. That will be just absolutely too late. But within that time frame from January to March, you do have some flexibility. But if you're not having a special speaker, let's try to stick with the official NAD offering schedule.
So Ralph asks, can we reach out to offer Liberty Magazine to attorneys, local attorneys who have professed support for religious liberty concepts?
Absolutely. Please do. Yes. In the Southern Union, we keep, and this is just the Southern Union, I can't speak for the other unions. In the Southern Union, we keep an updated database on all of the elected officials in the union. So that includes your city mayors, your commissioners, your councilmen, your city attorneys. You definitely want to get your city attorneys on there. You may want to get corporate attorneys for corporations. You may want to put HR directors on there for corporations. So yes, you definitely want to put attorneys on there. You want to put libraries on there if you can. You want to put your superintendents of education on there if you can. So yes, definitely.
Melissa, you had a
Yeah, I was going to say, hopefully some of our local pastors are watching as well. And I would suggest working with your pastor to, we want to send the magazine, or I think ideally to individuals that we have established relationships with. And so relationships that maybe your pastor has with other local clergy, other representing other faith traditions, I think that would be really helpful as well. And, I want to segue that into, and also I do want to say, make sure and sign up yourself. Liberty Magazine is not just a magazine to sponsor to others. It's really great content. I believe that wholeheartedly. I know that wholeheartedly. And so make sure that you are a thought leader in your community as well. But talking about those individuals that you have relationship with, I wondered if we could just talk really quickly about what we could do to have an effective religious liberty Sabbath. What are some suggestions for individuals to really highlight? And again, I like that Amireh said, not just focusing on one date, but it's a campaign season, right? That we really take this 3-month period to be able to highlight the religious liberty ministry of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So if I have served as the religious liberty local leader at my church, and I'll tell you a couple of things that worked really well. And again, your group, your church is going to be different than ours, but and so every population group is different. Relationships that are established are different, but a couple of things that have worked well for us is we've invited our representative for our county, our state legislator, a representative to come and participate. And again, there was when the church that I was at that time had an established relationship with that state legislator because they had been sending Liberty Magazine to that individual, and the religious liberty leader prior to me had developed a relationship with that individual. And I remember the lady saying when she came, the government representative, "Oh, you're one of 2 magazines. Liberty is one of 2 magazines that I allowed to be put on my coffee table in my office." And so again, not just religious liberty Sabbath, but those long-term relationships, I think, are really important in helping be effective in our religious liberty ministry in our local community. But yeah, so we had that come. I think, unfortunately, it probably will be very easy for you to identify individuals in your community who have had religious freedom challenges. And I think asking them to share their testimonies is another really powerful, particularly if it's the church member that's, that you're in Sabbath school class with, or that your, kids are in Pathfinders together, hearing those stories. Maybe perhaps you weren't even aware of struggles that they had gone to. Maybe they've immigrated from another country, and in that country, they experienced real religious persecution. I think hearing those kind of stories, again, really help highlight the need for this type of ministry. I don't know, you all may have some other suggestions as well.
So, what I've seen done and what I've been involved with are panel discussions. I mean, this is the perfect opportunity to highlight a current issue in religious liberty and to really dive in deep, find a local attorney who's worked in religious liberty issues, or get someone from your conference or union, PAL department, or as Melissa said, find someone who has struggled with a religious freedom problem and have a discussion. And you know what? It's also an excellent way to invite members of other faith communities into your church facility and say, hey, we're having an afternoon discussion on religious liberty. We've got some well-known local leaders who are going to be talking here. Please come, invite your church members also, and build up those important interfaith relationships in your community. And on that point, that's another area where you can also sponsor subscriptions for Liberty Magazine. The leaders of other congregations, Christian congregations, or your local synagogue, or your local Muslim community, Liberty Magazine is for them as well. And so include them on your list of subscriptions. What about you, Amireh? Anything that you've seen work well for, innovative, creative programming?
Yes, so I think it's important that you do a sermon on religious liberty Sabbath. this upcoming year is going to be a very tricky year. And I think that we need to address that when we talk about promoting religious liberty, because by the time the campaign is finished, we'll be in an election cycle for a presidential election cycle where primaries will be starting and held and completed before the campaign is done. And so Melissa made a suggestion of inviting a local elected official or an attorney. Those are all appropriate to do, but you do not want to invite someone who is running for election and who will use your church pulpit as their campaign pulpit. And the reason for that is twofold. One is because church should be focused on the spiritual and not the political. And you want to keep that in mind too as you're promoting the campaign, that religious liberty is a gift from God to us. And we want to promote it as a gift from God and not as a political platform or party platform for one or another party to promote themselves within your church. But the other thing that you want to do is you also want to make sure that in promoting religious liberty, you realize that your tax exemption for your church is under the same letter that it is for my church or Melissa's church or Bettina's church or Elder Brian's church, whatever church. We have one tax exempt letter that we're all under. And so if one church violates the campaign, political year campaign prohibitions, you jeopardize the church tax exempt status for all Seventh-day Adventist churches. And that's a pretty serious thing to put upon you, but it is a very important thing that we have to put upon you. Back to the religious liberty sermon though. When Melissa said we have the sermon, that sermon is in Word. And so what you can do is you can go grab that sermon. You can say, well, I wouldn't say this way. And, you can tweak it a little, make it your own, make it sound like, you can give it in your voice. But that's a great way also to promote the idea of religious liberty and not just the offering, because you want to promote what religious liberty is. And it's more than just an offering. It is a gift from God. And that's really what we're doing in this ministry. So I think that's important.
Bettina, I know that it was a priority for you to have this seminar or this webinar session as early as we are in early December, because as we know, the offering date moved a bit closer in January, earlier in January, but also because, again, we keep talking about this religious liberty campaign season and how we really want to encourage you to start your members thinking about how they're going to participate in the religious liberty offering on the offering date. And so that's why those social media graphics exist. So you can begin the conversation early. So again, people can be prayerfully considering how they participate and how they support which individuals in the community they want to send the subscriptions to, sponsor subscriptions to. Another thing that I love to do, and it was suggested to me by a local church member, is all of the names that they have on their subscription list, they actually mail the first copy with a letter explaining to the individual why they're receiving Liberty Magazine, which is a question that we frequently get at our office, right? Bettina, why am I receiving this magazine? Sometimes people are like, thank you. Why am I receiving this? Other times, maybe not as appreciative. But it's a great way to introduce yourself if you don't have that relationship and the Seventh-day Adventist Church to the individual, right? We as a faith tradition really value and respect the separation of church and state. and the religious freedom of individuals, those rights. And so we consider you as someone who influential in our community that makes a difference. And so we wanted you to be able to receive this complimentary subscription. I love that idea. I think that's a great idea. I would encourage that.
Yeah, and also, Melissa, personally delivering it. If it's someone who you want to build a relationship with, another faith leader, I mean, that's a perfect opportunity to say, hey, this is a resource that we're providing for you. And this is what we believe about separation of church and state, religious free exercise, and we'd like to talk more about it. So yeah, it opens up opportunities for relationship building. Now, here's a question that I get a lot, and that is, I have a question about a specific religious liberty issue. I've heard something in the news, or there's a case that I've heard about, or there's another organization that's talking about this or that or the other. Where, as a church member, do I go to get information about what's happening, what's current? What would you suggest?
So my suggestion would be to jump back on the website that you were just on, looking at the religious freedom information and signing up under the, I think it's Get Connected tab, maybe under the resources tab, but basically it's our contact form. And so many of you may have heard about this meeting because you've already subscribed. I think in the kit, we actually include a link for you to participate, but that's a way for us to continue to engage with you. So when we have webinars on specific topics, again, today's webinar is dealing specifically with the mechanics of the Religious Liberty Campaign, but when we deal with particular religious freedom issues, like we mentioned the Groff Supreme Court case, and we had webinars on that, letting you know that those sorts of things are happening. We just had a fantastic conference down at Southern Adventist University. Again, on this, staying on the YouTube channel that we're on right now, if you weren't able to attend and be with us, all of the sessions are recorded and archived here on the NAD Public Affairs and Religious Liberty channel. So that's a great place. And we were dealing with very contemporary religious freedom issues there as well. So those are two resources that I would really encourage you to check out. And then I know that there's a question about a podcast that is no more, but I know that there is one on the horizon. And I think maybe Bettina can share a little bit about what to expect there. And again, that's being able to speak in real time about religious freedom issues.
Absolutely. The podcast will be called Just Liberty, and it will be available on all platforms, and it will be available, we believe, mid-January 2024. And as Melissa said, that will be a place where you can find half-hour conversation and interview on current issues. And so I would encourage everyone to subscribe to that. We have already taped quite a few of them, and I know that they're great quality and really informative. So that is Just Liberty, and you'll be able to find that mid-January on all podcast platforms. We are getting toward the end of our hour, unfortunately. Why don't we just leave our listeners with one last call to action, word of advice, what you think they can do when they finish listening to this webinar to really prepare for an impactful religious liberty campaign. Amireh, what's your words of wisdom here?
I think that their best thing to do at this point is to go to the online resource website and just become familiar with what is out there, what they're receiving or they're about to receive, and start talking about how they're going to do it on January the 13th. Talk to their pastor, talk to their church board, and just, you got to start planning now, because we're only a month away. And between now and then, we've got Christmas and New Year. So start now and go look at all the resources we have on the website.
Okay, Melissa?
Yeah, I think I'm going to make sure, my suggestion is make sure and jump back to the website on December 18, and then watch the sermon and the campaign video, because I think that's really going to inspire you. And I know it will inspire your fellow church members when you're able to share those with them. If your pastor, again, if you work with your pastor to make sure that there is a religious liberty themed sermon that Sabbath. We want this to be the priority of our local church pastors as well, right? And so I think that's a great way. But if the sermon is not shown on Religious Liberty Sabbath, is not used in that way, then use it, maybe have a midweek service or and play it there, or even just post it on your social media, a link to it on your social media, because it's a really great resource. So yeah, I would say as soon as the 18th hits, make sure and jump back and take a look at those.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Amireh, and thank you everyone who works year after year to keep this ministry before the church members. Thank you for your commitment. Thank you for the time you put into this, the effort. We are so grateful, and we know that God has his hand over this ministry, and we know that the Adventist voice, the unique prophetic Adventist voice, is needed now more than ever. So Melissa, as we close out, would you like to offer a word of prayer?
I'd be happy to. Heavenly Father, thank you so very much for this Sabbath day that is just ending for some of us and about to close. We are so appreciative, Lord, of this gift. It truly is just such a privilege to be able to have that time to spend with you each week. We thank you for these individuals who have tuned in or who may be watching at a later date, who are prioritizing the religious liberty ministry at their local church, or maybe at their conference or union level as well. Lord, we all have very busy schedules, and volunteering at your local church, I know, is can sometimes add to already very busy schedules. But so we very much appreciate their commitment to this ministry area. We ask that you equip them, that you inspire them, and that you empower them. We thank you in advance, Lord, for hearing and answering these prayers. We know that you're a true and faithful God. We also ask, Lord, that you bless the magazines that are sponsored as they go to the individuals that they are being sent to. May they be impactful. May the Holy Spirit work on the hearts of those individuals that receive that magazine, so that they recognize the freedom that is found in you. We pray all these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.